Finish. Button.
That means I'm more.
Good talk.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. We just changed these batteries last time. Maybe we need a whole new mic. ثم ما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله سبحانه وتعالى وخير الهدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها إن كل محدثة بدعة أما بعد. Yeah, that static is annoying. Sound like somebody. That mic is off, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we know it's not that. It can't be the batteries. We just changed it last week this time. And we only did 4 2. So.
It's want to try with different batteries?
We did that last week.
I mean, do it again this week?
We did that last week. Batteries don't last a few days. We only did the program, the khutbah, 2 khutbah, that's it. Haven't been no salawat to come with it, so I don't know. If it keeps doing it, you just give me the other mic, and because it has something to do with the
Connection?
fact that this is battery operated. It's, you know, this whole remote thing. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Lord of all of the worlds, the one that gave. We seek His help, we seek His assistance, and we seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. It's not okay. Okay. We seek refuge on Allah
Right there,
subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right there, now.
From the
Okay.
evil of all of our deeds and the bad consequences of them. Whosoever wa ta'ala guides, none can lead them astray. Whosoever wa ta'ala leaves to his desires, none will be able to guide him right out of the law. I bear witness that there is no deity, there is the right to be worshipped in truth other than Allah. He is alone, He has no partners, and I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his last and final prophet and messenger of humanity. This is our second talk regarding the issue of social injustice. And this is going to be our night, Thursday night. For that, we may even add a second night because there's a lot of issues we want to cover, and things are moving and happening very fast, rapidly. So, as opposed to starting back the class on the Sirah, for the Prophet, maybe I may make Thursday and Tuesday for this. Because what's going to happen, for example, tonight we're going to talk about a few things, but then the next time I do the class, I'm going to play live footage where people can hear, because it's very astonishing when you hear these accounts, people who are 101 years old in 2014 talking about their family members that were really slaves. And you know, you hear the voices. It's a very profound thing to hear those people really talk about their experience. It's a lot different from reading in the book, hearing some scholars of history talk about it, or someone sing a song about it. It's a lot different. You're actually hearing the people who, they're 5th generation people that their family members were slaves here in America after the abolishment of the slaves in America. And you know, it's amazing just to hear how they still have these recordings, man. It's like, wow, you know. So, you know, we're gonna do some of that the next time, just so people can really understand, like, this is not being made up. I'm not just talking. There's no debate about it. It's factual. So the intent tonight, I should back up and say the overall intent is Allah Ta'ala command us to be quiet if we don't know. وَلَا تَقَفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. And here it's amazing. Allah didn't say وَلَا تَقُولُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Don't say what you know. He said وَلَا تَقَفُ. Taqafu was not even like saying a word. It's like syllables or saying ba ba ma ma. So Allah is saying in essence, don't say nothing. The least thing. Don't even utter a sound on the subject matter unless you know what you're talking about. And so this is the intent to not only educate but to lift the ignorance from the people, because wallahi, we still, as the topic tonight is, the debate over protesting. And there's a big debate, not just in America, but around the world about protesting. As it relates to an American society, or if we will, a Western society, or if you like, a non-Muslim society, or if you like, Darul Kufr, however you like to coin it. Or as it relates to, as they say, Islamic world, or the land of Islam, or the Muslim lands, or if you like, as they say, foreign countries, Islamic countries, Eastern, Far Eastern, whatever you like. It's a big debate, and it's old, you see. So we intend to talk about that. Is it lawful? Civilly, because that's a whole issue. Civil things and things that are not civil. Even in our religion, we have civil issues and issues that are not civil. Do you deal with politics or not? Is politics from Islam? If you live in a Western country, can you be involved or not? All of this we're going to mention a little bit tonight. Is it that we're fighting to have black supremacy, or are we fighting, to stay alive, to survive? I'm saying, because we keep, this express mail fatwa from abroad that, point blank, we wrong, and even heard, because I don't want to make wounds that are bleeding burn like acid being poured in them, I won't mention any names. And we respect scholarship. We're not going to play that game. We respect people of knowledge. We're not people who are ahlul bid'ah, people who have deviated. No, Allah. But there's some, just like there is a book written, The Miseducated Negro, then there is still that, and there's the miseducated Muslim. You see, and the only way to start to deal with this by foundation is we got to talk about it. So this is the attempt tonight, and then like I said, we mashiyatullah, if Allah wills, I might add Tuesday, because just playing some of these accounts, man, it's amazing, and all of this stuff is public information. You're talking about a man who can't see, finding all of this out audio. You know what I'm saying? Educating himself, blowing his own mind. So I'm sure a lot of people who talk and don't know. So we'll begin firstly. The first thing, again, we want to talk about the issue of protests. And I mentioned the title to be like this: protesting the big debate. That's the first part of the talk, protesting the big debate. So they have two definitions in English, and then we'll go and talk about in our religion the concepts. And if you look up protesting, me and the brother had this conversation this morning. I won't mention his name either. I hope he's watching. And it was beneficial. I learned a lot from him. I'm sure he learned a lot from me. But you can still see the level of confusion and the level of misplacing stuff. For example, they have two definitions. One of them is the legal term of protesting, and they said to have civil disturbance of the peace. But then when they gave the dictionary version, they coupled looting, violence, it became very broad, very long, you know what I'm saying? Like, wow. And so the first thing we want to say is that if you talk about what we mentioned last week, the issue of enjoining the good, prohibiting the evil, religiously, as Jews in America, Christians in America, Muslims in America, and I'm sure in other places that I'm going to speak about here, we all believe and have some context scripturally to stand up. We all have that in our religion. The second thing is we all have a textual base from the Creator, from God, from Allah, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, in our scriptures against oppression. And thirdly, we all agree that the best way in achieving that objective is in a peaceful manner first. So when we talk about this issue, we said last time that we have to be truthful, we have to be just, and we can't be biased. The only, when we talk about now switching the channel to Muslims, the only scholarship to deal with this is not coming out of Saudi Arabia. I'm sorry. The people have made it like that. And when we talk about other places of scholarship, such as Egypt, for example, and I know somebody's going to say, well, that's hard, they have problems. Okay, but we can go there and we can talk about problems also in Saudi Arabia too. But the point is, scholarship abroad is scholarship abroad. We in America. And even those scholars in other lands, such as Egypt, they talked about it. And in Saudi Arabia, to be fair, they talked about it. It's the difference between this issue of, if you want to say A, protesting, B, if you want to say going against the government, C, if you want to say getting something done publicly because of an injustice. There's a big difference between that being in a Muslim country, and when we say Muslim country, I'm not saying everything is 100% ran according to the Sharia, because that's an argument too. Can it be considered a Muslim country or Islamic country, or are they the same or are they different? They use the terms interchangeably. Whether it's a government that's Islamic or Muslim, or the majority of the people live in that locale or Muslim, this is normally what they constitute with a issue of debate to be a Muslim or Islamic country. So it's a big difference when we talk about those three things in a Muslim country versus a non-Muslim country. That's the first thing. And some scholars from Al-Azhar, because we don't want to say the scholars, this is another problem. People say the scholars. Okay, so when we say the scholars, that means al-umum in general. So that means all the scholars agree. This is like saying every single scholar alive has this opinion. This is falsehood and deception. And this is one of the things that's causing problems. The scholars. You mentioned 2 scholars. 5 scholars. The scholars. I mean, come on. You see. So some ulama of Azhar, they mentioned this and they talked about it in light of going back to the issue of the companions. And that's where we go back as Muslims. But we want to talk about it in light of the Muslims, because we're Muslim dealing with this in America, outside of America, and then we're going to talk about it as it relates to people being oppressed, generally, primarily black people. So we know that in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned about the leader. And the Prophet prohibit us from disobeying the leader, going against the leader, because if you think about it, if the leader has the power, the leader has the weapons, the leader has all of the advantages, if you disobey him and make him mad, if you disobey him and cause him a problem, he can crush you. So that wouldn't make sense to rise up against the leadership when you have no power and you have total disadvantage. The second thing, there are some exceptions to the rule because it will happen. And sometimes the people gain an upper hand over the leader, over the government. And so this is why the Prophet mentioned the exception. And then the Prophet mentioned the issue of al-kufr. Al-kufr here in this narration, some people think it means a sin, because the word in Arabic, kufr, it has many meanings. One of them means sin, disobedience. So the radical people, the people that miss the mark, that think they know, in the Muslim countries, soon as they find some flaws with the leader, soon as they see the leader did something sinful or wrong, because humans are going to sin, make error, then that's it. They say, we got to go against him. We can spill his blood. We can take him down. We can overthrow him. We can start a war. We can revolt. But Prophet, he didn't just say that word al-kufr. He said kufr bawah. And the second term describes what type of sin or disbelief. They said this is clear. Nobody would disagree with this type of thing that the leader did. And most of the time they said this means that leader, he has changed the laws. He has changed the rulings that Allah has given that the people should be dealt with in light of. So for example, if a leader was drinking, you have a leader, a king, he's drinking, okay? And in Muslim countries now we have presidents and these kind of things. So the Muslim leader is drinking. He's known, he's a drunkard. You can't kill him because that's considered kufr, that's a sin. But if the Muslim says it's permissible for people to do fornication and adultery, or the leader, he says it's permissible to make these people starve as a punishment, or furthermore, he said it's permissible to kill these people because they're monkeys, they're dogs. Now he's changing the rule on top of it still being what's called kufr, a sin, but it's a major sin that nobody would agree. He has no right to legislate. Legislation is for the creator of the heavens and the earth. So that's why the Prophet said, kufr bawah. He has a clear, undisputable thing that's major kufr, meaning he's outside the fold. And we don't have to take him outside of the fold. He did it himself by sanctioning something that Allah made lawful to be unlawful, and vice versa. And this is also one of the things that many of the classical scholars, they mention, that makes a person who is a person of knowledge, if you follow him in that thing, this also constitutes that you're following him and made your shirk, because he not only told you to do something and you follow him, but he made what was unlawful lawful. And you, because he made it lawful, because of his greatness and who he is and his knowledge, you think he has the right and you follow him, then this is major shirk. And Shaikh Islam Taymiyyah, he mentioned that. This is one of the dangers of having guluf salihin, being an extreme person with your religious leaders, because it can go to the level of, like we say, godship, basically. So, backing up, the Prophet mentioned this issue of the leaders, and it happened to be clear, undisputable, major disbelief for you to bring down that leader. But now all of the scholars who talk about this, they said, but some of the conditions, number one, you must have the power to do it. Because again, it's a no-brainer. If you don't have the power, how are you going to do it? We mentioned this the last talk last week. The prophet said, if you don't have the ability, it's a no-brainer. If you can't do it, how are you going to, attempt to do something you can't do? Doesn't make sense. You don't have to be a scholar or brain surgeon or someone with high IQ to figure that out. You have to be able to. The second thing is that what you're dealing with must not cause a greater evil than the evil that caused you to go out against that leadership or that government. And we say, if Allah Ta'ala hates injustice, then that's general. But moreover, when it comes to somebody just openly feeling like you have the right to be killed, and I allow you to live, or I allow you to die. And this, it's like he's taking a role as if he is Allah Ta'ala. And what is worse than that? And we know Allah said, "One fitna to akbar min al-qatl," and fitna is worse than being killed. But here, the context of fitna was talking about the major shirk. Not being able to worship Allah Ta'ala is worse than being killed upon right belief and being oppressed to the point somebody takes your life. Because if someone stops you from worshiping, if someone persecutes you, guess what? Your life is going to be miserable. But if someone kills you and you're innocent, you're oppressed, your worship, your relationship with your Creator is good, then you win anyway. You win in this life and in the hereafter, you see. So when we say it's worse to be a people who people just feel that they can kill, then this is the highest level of this type of oppression. And you'll find that, the companions, they went through this. This is one of the highlights that the scholars talk about. The disciples of the Prophet ﷺ, we call them companions, Sahaba, they went through that, And some of them went out against Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, the great leader during that time of the second generation. Some of them were killed. But then we know there were uprisings where the Muslims got the upper hand over the government, pull them down, and so forth. So what we're saying is that protesting, in layman terms, for us in America means you stand up for your rights, you speak out against oppression, and normally they will say this is what's considered going against the ruler, because the ruler in those countries don't allow you to speak out. Prophet he said, jihad, akbar al-jihad, kalimatun, Prophet he said that one of the greatest levels of fighting jihad is to al-kalimatu haq and the sultan al-ja'i, or kama qal, to speak the truth in the face of an oppressive leader. So if you look at that text and the other text, then it's not really something that somebody could just outright condemn, because the prophet is saying over here, this is the greatest type of striving. To tell the leader a statement of truth in his face. While some scholars will give interpretation, this means in private. While others will say, away from the people. But that's their interpretation, because in most cases, who's from the common folk, who's from those people that need to express themselves, want to have that platform to get that close to the leadership. So normally, if the people have a representative like we have in our country, then they go, they make the complaints, they make the noise, then the representative goes on their behalf. But it's not thinkable that I can go to the president or White House. Who am I? Care if one or two, people come to him, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands. This is pressure. It's going to make a difference, you see. And we know the prophet, he talked about the one who's sitting in the time of fitna, tribulation and fighting is better than the one who's standing, and the one who is standing is better than the one who's walking, and the one who's walking, meaning in the direction of the commotion and the trial and tribulation of fighting, is better than the one who's running. But that has a context too. That has a context too, because you didn't see the Prophet ﷺ just sit when they wanted to annihilate him and his companions. When he came to encircle them and kill them in their home city, El Medina. You didn't see him just sit. No. You didn't see him say, well, we're not going to do nothing. Allah will make a way. No. Allah Azza wa Jal already gave them the green light, gave them the credence, gave them the command to defend themselves. So when we look at what we said last week, ability as part of the thing that most of the scholars, when they talk about going out against the leader that has clear, undisputable, undeniable wrongdoing that nobody would disagree with. It's not something that somebody can say, well, maybe it's okay, maybe it's wrong. No, everybody agrees. Everybody agrees. Like we'll put back on the table the slaying of George Floyd. Everybody who sees the video, nobody except he is a evil devil will deny the level of that murder. And that's why it touched so many people around the world. It's undeniable. Say, and they tried to lie in the beginning. Well, it was an underlying perhaps type of death. That's clear lie. I mean, this is what they do and everything. But the one who is sane, and he's not just a wicked individual that believes that blacks deserve to be killed, and moreover that they can take the life of that black. If it's outside of that, everybody agrees that level of oppression is very abhorrible. So likewise, when a leader has that type of, as we say, blood on the knife, nobody can deny it. Then this is one of the times that even the prophet mentioned you can go out against that leader. But you must have, number one, again, you must have the ability, you must have the power, and that which, and this is profound, the harm that may come from that, the harm that potentially can come from dealing with that has to be less than the harm you're dealing with. And that shows you it's going to be some harm. People think, oh, it has to be spick and span. Nothing should be a result of that. Come on, this is like unrealistic. This is unrealistic. Something has to happen. And Allah mentions in Surah Al-Baqarah when He said, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضُ. And if it was not for Allah's defense, that He used some people to check and fight other people, the whole world would have been corrupt. So Allah in His wisdom, He uses His creation to do something that's considered Allah's defense. Allah's defending you through people. And we've seen that throughout the history, people being defended. And we say that's the work of God. That's the work of Allah. This is, Allah's doing. So, that point, when we talk about the protesting from an Islamic perspective, there's a big debate. When we talk about, in layman terms, going against the ruler, going against the leadership. And again, it happened in the history of the companions. Now, some people are going to argue, but that's not a proof to do it. Okay, all right. But we're talking about a reality, right? Whenever it's something that people want to use, they say, oh, the companions, their actions, their statements is a proof. Now it's not a proof. It's not a proof, when someone wants to shoot down, going against or going out against oppression, even though it's a government, So we're not going to, go back and forth on that. But the reality is, it's a big debate. It's a big debate. The second thing is that everything that we deal with, from the salah to the issue of calling the adhan, from the issue of how we live, from the issue of how we, shop, buy our food, from the issue of how we dress, from the issue of language. Everything, when you live in a un-Islamic or a non-Muslim country, is different from living in an Islamic or Muslim country. For example, the adhan. In a Muslim country, unless the rule is oppressive, you hear the adhan out loud, the call to prayer. It should be on the mic, you should hear it. But in a non-Islamic country, you can't just do that. Why? Because they have ordinances, noise levels and this and that. So if someone calls the adhan in the masjid and it's not on a loudspeaker, you could say that's not from Islam. It should be called out loud. But guess what? That's privy to where we live, outside of an Islamic or a Muslim environment. So likewise, when you talk about this issue of the protesting, then we know that this is something that is part of the First Amendment. You go to the First Amendment of the Constitution, and from amongst those things that's in there, the right to peaceful assembly. Now, when we talk about that issue, unfairly, they couple being in the street, talking against what is oppression, what is wrong, and trying to demand some change. They often couple that with tearing up, burning down buildings. And some even said, I heard one Shaikh who was talking, the brother was translating, he said that the protesting, and he was talking in light of Saudi Arabia, he said, the scholars here, we don't allow it in any circumstance because it's something that leads to tearing up, civil unrest. But we said, again, in the Constitution, it says peaceful assembly. And just as we know, I heard myself in Newark a couple of weeks ago, the police, along with the mayor and the people in Newark, and people came from surrounding cities, they had a protest, and guess what? There was no tearing up anything. No burning buildings. They said peaceful protest. But the police was involved, against police brutality. They were with the people, there, saying we want to make a change. We have to change legislation. We have to deal with the bad cops, separate them from the good cops. We know that, even though some people probably don't like hear his name, because I heard that they uncovered him taking some money from the police union. That's one thing. But Cuomo, he mentioned, by and large, the protests across the state of New York have been peaceful. So it's no doubt you can do that without burning and tearing up buildings. That's the point we're making. And even there's some contradictory statement from Imam Uthaymeen, where most of the time he's saying what the rest of the people said. Al-Albani, Ben Baz, they're ulama su. Are you serious? They said they're evil scholars, Or some people said they're people of bid'ah. Are you serious? SubhanAllah. And so we also know that Imam Uthaymeen, which again, this is contradictory too, said, if you were in a Western country, for example, and they allow you to protest peacefully, you can do it so as long as you're not going out against the government. When I heard that, I said, SubhanAllah, may Allah bless the Shaikh and have mercy on him. But again, we ask, when you're trying to change legislation, who are you talking to? You're talking to the government. Who are the people that, when you read the Constitution, or you read the 27 amendments, which I encourage people to go read them, the Articles of Confederation, because you don't know until you go and see what's in those documents, what the deal really is. Who are we talking about except the government? So how can you do a peaceful protest, but don't say nothing against the government? It's like how? And it can be peaceful, but we ask, this is the next point. If it's from the customs of the people, the laws of the land, and again, there's a difference of opinion. People want to use a wide brush, but many scholars have said this falls under enjoining the good, prohibiting the evil, being in the streets, because they're using the technical term protest. Let's remove that term. If you're in the streets and you're talking about the evil and you're telling them what they should be doing is right, if we remove that word protest, this is what we say in every walk of life. You're fighting for justice. This is enjoining the good. And the injustice, you're prohibiting the evil. So we know that this is a thing that, you can do Islamically. But at the same time, we understand it's something that's from the customs of the people. Well, look at this. If you go and research the Boston Tea Party, who knows about the Boston Tea Party? Anybody here? Boston Tea Party?
When was it?
The Boston Tea Party.
Yeah. 1775, I think. Either 1775 or 1776.
It's before the Declaration of Independence. 17 rules, halal means, okay, we'll get to that. But some people say it doesn't work. It's a waste of time. Somebody singing, swinging. Are you serious? The people that were considered the colonists, those were the people that came from Great Britain. Now, they didn't come here, as the story they told, for asylum from Great Britain because of religious persecution. No, they came here for money. They came here for them still being under the rule of the British government, although they're here in this land. And so what they used to do was have a lot of things sent here from Great Britain, and they would get taxed for it. Great Britain would make them pay them a tax for sending this stuff. One of the things they used to get on a large level, one of the main things was tea, because they drink a lot of tea. So they not only charged them a tariff, a tax, but they said, hey, if they can pay this tax, we're going to make the tax higher. Because we thought, these people, they paying tax, and they're getting a lot of tea, so we're going to make the taxes higher. So the colonists, which again, these are the British people that left Great Britain and they're here trying to establish themselves in this country, and they decided they're not going to pay no more taxes on this tea. They're tired of it. They're taking advantage of second-class citizens. We here, they way over there. They still demanding from us. So there's something worth of tea dumped off the ship. So what happened was that is what started some of the fighting back and forth between them. Of course, the French were involved because the French was here. And that got them to write down some type of treaties which became known as the Declaration of Independence. And they gained their independence through what we would call today protesting, a riot, revolting. So they know it works. They know it works. And that's why they don't want the people to do it in this country. They don't want the people to gather because the voice, it works. If you're oppressed and you gather and you speak and you put that thing down on paper and you go against the system, it works. It works. So what they did, if you fast forward to now, the issue of the Constitution being written, or the Articles of Confederation, that's why they wrote the right to peaceful assembly. And the right to bear arms. Why? Because they wanted to protect themselves against from doing them like that again. So really, those things in the Constitution was for them, but Allah's plan is that for everyone that became a citizen in this country is relevant to them too. So you can see, number one, for those who say protesting doesn't work, it works. It works. And, some people say even the civil rights movement had no benefit. One conversation I had, that means it's still going.
Yeah. Finish button.
Yeah. I said, when you go on the bus or the train, do you sit in the part of the train where the engine is at? You get smoke and soot all on your clothes, or you sit wherever you like. When you get on the plane, you say, I sit where I like. That's the end of the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so, and people might not like the theory that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had of, nonviolence, but even as a Muslim in our religion, the first thing we try to do is without fighting or violence. This is just like common sense. This don't mean you're soft or you're a pushover or, you're being too passive. I mean, every cup can be full. And look at Rosa Parks. Look at Rosa Parks. The lady was taken off the bus because she wouldn't give her seat to who? A white man. Arrested. She knew that she could go to jail, but that day she didn't care. Her cup was full. She said enough is enough. Guess what? That sparked the civil rights boycott of the buses, which that's when Reverend King got involved as a young preacher, and that changed the situation where you ride SEPTA train and bus in Philadelphia, you ride Bi-State in St. Louis, you ride New Jersey Transit in New Jersey, you ride the Metro in New York, and you sit anywhere you please. And nobody can tell you, get up out of my seat, you nigger. Nobody can tell you that. So don't tell me that it didn't have an impact, it didn't change, it didn't benefit. And we say again, with all due respect, all the foreigners, we include ourselves, but all the people that came from all those other countries that think, it's just, one nigga, like all of this over the life of a nigga, guess what? You wouldn't even be here in this country enjoying luxuries, big houses, nice cars, all your pretty children and your wife enjoying America and its comforts, not to mention the trials and tribulations of being astray in this country. You wouldn't have that fortitude, and opportunity without those movements. Let's just be straight. I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk freely like this, you know what I'm saying, without those movements. Yeah, you wouldn't. Freedom of religion. Muslim wouldn't be able to go on no masjid. Christian wouldn't be able to go on no church. Jew wouldn't be able to go on no synagogue without those movements. Wouldn't be no Eid, Fitr, Eid, Kabir. Wouldn't be able to wear no kimar, no kufi, no thob, no nothing. Read the Quran, pass a book, sell it. You wouldn't be able to do none of that in this country without that movement. And that's from Allah. That's from Allah. He decreed that. But without that being part of the scheme, that wouldn't have been possible. And that's why Allah made that possible through the people's struggle. Through the people's struggle. Now, so we know that, that is just to discourage people and to change people, persuade people to look at something in a bad light. No, it had a profound impact, and we have to remember that. As it relates to the white supremacy part, we could talk about that in great detail, but we want to say that not all white people historically felt that blacks, African Americans, niggers, Negroes deserve to not live. Majority of them, yes, because they have some long history that constitutes that sick mentality for them. And one of the things, it was very, 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 very disturbing that the concept of the World Fair in the zoo. And when I researched this, I said, wow. I mean, and this goes before Darwin's theory, because of course he was the one that made that famous here in America, and they pushed that as an agenda because he was a scientist, and they relied on the scientific evolution, and you have to display it and prove it to the people. But even before him, some people, they came up with the idea that blacks were evolution from the highest level of apes or monkeys. And what they did, they brought certain people from certain tribes of Africa here and displayed them in the cage with monkeys in St. Louis in the zoo. But this was called the World Fair back then. And the whole idea was to prove to the people that these people are not human. Therefore, they can't have equality, because in order to have equality, they have to be what? Human. So their point was to prove these people are not human. This way, they don't get equality. This way, it doesn't matter if we mistreat them, even if we kill them. So they had this thing. Millions of people came from around the world, from Japan, from Germany. I mean, to see this, nigger in the cave next to a monkey. And then it became so popular, they made a zoo in Washington. No disrespect, Washington, D.C. And then, after they made the National Zoo in Washington, then they made the biggest zoo in the United States in the Bronx. And all of these zoos had a monkey and an African that they went and got from Africa in their cage. This was part of how they dehumanized. And imagine somebody coming and looking and you say, ha ha ha, what's that? And then, they poking him with the umbrella in his face and throwing stuff up at him and look at his teeth. Now, we know we don't like to be teased. We don't like to be teased, Imagine somebody coming, he said, man, look at him, he got a big ass head, and look at his ears, and, you get upset. People talk about you. Like, imagine thousands of people, millions of people coming, as spectators, and, this is your life in a cage, man. And they throwing stuff at you, throwing stuff on you, and, poking you. And you're a human being. Can you imagine? They said once they finished proving, because this was an experiment, but their delio, as we say, they proved that these people are not human, so they can't get equality. There's no way. So once they finished that, the man, they let him be free. They want to send him back to Africa, but guess what? He's been here for all of this time. He don't know if his family's still alive. He don't know where they at. Moreover, he's so depressed from feeling no self-worth. He comes from a monkey, but he know he doesn't come from a monkey. Mind over matter. He kills himself. Yeah. So when you talk about this level of injustice, white people really didn't know a lot of innocent everyday people. The government knew, but a lot of innocent people didn't know. But at some point, they began to feel that that was wrong. I'll give you 4 examples, inshallah ta'ala, and then we'll wind down. There's one of them and I'm going to start recent and go back. Al Sharpton, when he was talking in Minnesota at the ceremony of George Floyd, he said that he remembered being at a rally before, and a young white lady came up to him and said, "Go home, nigga," like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said this time he was in Minnesota. He stopped to talk with some news reporters. He said that somebody tapped him on his shoulder. He said he braced himself, took a deep breath, because you don't know who's tapping, what's going to happen when you turn around. Turns around and looks. He said there's a little white girl. She looked to be about 11 years old. So I know in his mind, he's thinking like, she's going to say something like he experienced before, "Go home, nigga," or whatever, something derogatory. He said she looked at him, she said, "No justice, no peace." Lord bone. But can you imagine, like, there was a time that he mentioned that some white people didn't feel that way. He said, "What are you here for? Go home, nigga." So what, your people got killed, go home. You also have two cases with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. One, he told the story of when he was in Harlem. He was writing some papers and documents trying to push legislation back then. He said someone approached him. He said he had his head down writing. He came to his office, approached him and said, "Are you Dr. King?" He said, without looking up, he kept writing. He said, "Yes." He said, then he looked up and he felt the knife stabbed in the chest by a Dominican lady. He said they operated on him. They removed the blade because, obviously speaking, the knife stayed in his chest. And he said that the tip of the blade was, it's not even inches. I mean, just very close to the main artery, that if that artery gets cut, you basically drown in your own blood. He said they told him, had you sneezed, it had only you sneezed, that point would have cut that artery, you wouldn't have been here. So he was giving a speech. And man, I'm going to hold my emotions now, subhanAllah. Because remember, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from St. Louis. That's why my preaching is like the old Baptist preaching. Yeah, that's our style we came from, He said, and he was making points about the progress that they made. And he said, but had I sneezed like this, we would not have the March on Washington. Had I sneezed like this. And so he said, he got all of these letters from all over the world. The president, vice president, the governor of New York at that time. Because remember, he was in Harlem when that happened. So he got a lot of letters. He said he can't remember what they said, what was in the letters. He said, but one letter he will not forget. He said, and it sticks with him to this day very clear. He said it was, you're going to smile and say this, it was a letter from a student in White Plains, New York. And he opened it, he read it, and it was a 9th grade student, a white girl. And, by this time it's all over the paper, New York Times, had he sneezed. And so after she told who she was, this and that, she said she heard in the news, had he sneezed, he wouldn't have been here. And she said, I'm so glad that you didn't sneeze. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. Allah Akbar. There's another case. After Rosa Parks was taken to jail for refusing to give her seat up, and they started the bus protest. I listened to this, and we're going to play some of this footage next time. It's amazing to hear this. The white lady was saying how, she used to hear, she said, the niggas sing from the church. You can hear him from, the porch. She said, but she never heard somebody speaking. Like, Dr. King was speaking. She said, and one of the things that amazed her and it changed her was that he said, you're no different than me. You're no better than me. And she said she thought like, wow, how could that be that we the same? She said, I never thought about that. She said, you know, you have white people that would pick cotton and stuff in the field, and you look over and you had niggas in their field, but you were all doing the same thing. She said, wow. He didn't say, you're not better than me. I'm better than you. He said, you're no different from me. She said, man, she said, that just changed my whole outlook. She said, so she got involved, and she went and helped organize some organization to fight against injustice for blacks. And she said one time she was in the protest, and one of the black ladies looked up and said, what you doing here? Like, you know, you're a white woman. And she said, my people, you know, they won't listen to me, you know, I'm considered old white trash, you know. I have no other choice but to fight for, you know, the rights of people like you, or something to this effect. So the point is that even if someone wants to argue, as we're hearing a lot more, some of our Muslim brothers, sadly speaking, and the African American, you know, talking so bad about this issue. At most, if somebody wants to protest because it's from the laws of the land, it's encouraged by the government, it's in the Constitution, without tearing up and breaking stuff and vandalizing, then, you know, at most you can't say nothing. At least, you know, if you don't want to do it, don't do it, but still you have an obligation to get involved. You know, be with some type of organization, start your own organization, have some meetings, you know, go to your Congress, go to your senator, you know, you have an obligation. But the sad part is that even if this is something someone wants to claim Islamically, which we know this is not true, because again, it can go either way. It can go either way. And the rule for talking against something that's evil is that if it could be either way, then that leaves room for some type of interpretation, which leaves room for someone not to be so hard-lined against that thing. But if it's unanimously wrong, then that leaves no room for interpretation, and you gotta kind of be strict with that. And we know this, again, it could be understood, it's okay or it's not okay. But the sad part is that even if it's wrong, we know Islamically, if you have nothing else, and we'll end with this, you have the 5 things of necessity. The 5 things, ahkam ad-darura, that you have no other choice. We know that riba, we not loosely call it interest and advantages and this and that now, it's prohibited Islamically. Even the Jews, they prohibit it amongst themselves, but they do it with other people. But all of those same scholars in those countries that are condemning this protest, they said if you're afraid that someone will steal your money, and that's even in their country, if you keep your money in your car, somebody will break and take your money, then you are allowed to put it in a bank that really normally you can't deal with because of the issue of interest and usury, which is a whole nother talk in itself. That also, if you have nothing else but pork or alcohol, we know those 2 things are prohibited in Islam. But if you have nothing else, Allah made it real clear. You know, if it's not something you're doing because you like, but you're forced to doing, you know, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will not hold you accountable. The same thing, your honor. What did Ibrahim say? This is my what? My sister. Because of honor. Going to steal his wife, take or rape her. Your honor. You got 2 things left. Your religion and your what? Your life. So even if somebody wants to beat the drum, it's this, it's that, man, listen, again, we're not talking about supremacy. We're trying to be, you know, above the white man and outdo them. You know, we'll talk about the Black Wall Street next time and how people were successful, and that was taken away from them in Oklahoma, in Atlanta, in Durham, in Virginia, and many places. But the issue is we are trying to survive. They believe, and it's written in the Constitution, that what they mention of good, it is excluded for the Native American, and they said now 3/5 of others. It used to be 3/5 of a human being. They want to make it more, I guess, acceptable or less hurtful or disrespectful. So they took human beings and put others. Now we're others. You can't even say 3/5 of human being. Just say others. So and as long as they feel that we're 3/5 of something and not a whole human being, then they're not killing the human being technically. They're killing 3/5 of something. This is why you find them shooting and killing, and we'll go on and on and on. The whole thing of eugenesis, and we could get real funky around here when we talk about the systematic approach to really ending and minimizing black life in this country. So, yes, it's a big debate about protesting, but unfortunately, again, you in your country, nobody has the right to tell you from another country, especially if they don't know all the variables, and I don't think they know all the variables if they're lumping, talking, protesting, demanding, and condemning to be part of tearing up, looting, and burning. No, it's not. People who do that because they want to do that out of anger, or you have agent provocateurs to do it to make it look like the protesters see they're bad, but they are two different ends of the coin. One is day, one is night. The second thing, again, we said that there's a big difference of opinion about going against the leader. And most of those contradictory or those confusing verdicts, fatwas we call them, they're talking about in a Muslim country with a Muslim leader. They're not talking about in a non-Muslim country with a non-Muslim leader. So they're taking those and using them out of context when they have no right to do that. And also, it's not about race for us. Yeah and no. It's not about race because we're not trying to prove we're better than anybody. We know that Allah has given virtue in all human beings. But when we talk about what the white establishment has done in the name of their supremacy, then we, of course, have to fight for us as a people. That's just by default. And it's not because we want to prove we're better than them, but we were the victims. We're the victims. So, it's a no-brainer to say we want to fight but don't include who we are. We're just fighting. Who you fight for? For just people. What people? Any people. No, we fight for us. And those who are oppressed like us, but how you going to fight for somebody and don't fight for yourself? And then the last thing is, again, this is something that Allah has made as a nature and a way of people, that just because there's going to be some bloodshed, just because there's going to be some turmoil, doesn't mean that you just sit. No, you don't just sit. Now, we can count many wars, many expeditions in our history of Islam and religion. People lost lives, blood was shed, but you're not going to gain anything without sacrificing yourself. And that's why many of them, they said, from those who view protesting to be okay without violence, whoever does it, whoever's out speaking and he gets killed, qatala shahidan, he dies a shaheed. So inshallah, we hope that this gives some clarity, because there was a lot of confusion in the Muslim community with the African American, non-African American. And please don't tell me about a fatwa from Saudi Arabia or fatwa from Abu Khadija, or who cares about these people? You know what I'm saying? We're talking about lives, man. Somebody's going to be dead and the people are going to still be here arguing. We're talking about something that Allah has said, whoever kills a single soul. If it's one black man or not, all of this over one nigger. I mean, a life is a life. for those who know. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us against the wrongdoing people. We ask Allah to give us clarity, give us firmness in our that which we're seeking, that which we believe, that which we understand. We ask Allah to make the truth to be seen as truth, falsehood as falsehood. We ask Allah to keep the oppression from us and keep us from oppressing others. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His promise that He will help the oppressed people, no matter who they are, wherever they may be, even if some time has to pass, by His wisdom and His knowledge. Wa sallallahu wa sallam baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad.
Finish button.